This is the Dales Report. I'm happy to be joined here in the podcast today, the CEO of Numinus Wellness, Payton Nyquvest. How are things?
Things are well. How are you?
Good. Summer's over. We're into Q4. I know it's been a little stale with the investment world in this industry, and we keep telling people week in and week out, we are close. Do you feel the same way?
I think so for sure. I think, the conversations we have with institutions, like there's been no drop off in enthusiasm or interest in the space. And as you said, I think, we're now moving into a new and exciting period. I think with a lot of research coming online, I think there's been a really necessary consolidation and pullback. And I think, frankly, the timing of it has been necessary. Things, got really hyped very, very quickly. And I think a little breath of reality has been a good thing. And I think the space is well poised for another run here coming into the winter.
Yeah, I think so too. I found it interesting too. And I know this is good for the overall industry, but Citigroup, they released a top stock picks of in their disruptive innovations report, and both the TIE and Compass made that list. So yes, that's outside of Numinus, but that bodes well for you and the overall industry, does it not?
It's great for the space, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's begin. I know you announced this month that your second facility submitted their dealer's license application to Health Canada. This adds another 7,500 square feet. So the second site, it aims to supply clinical grade materials and access to qualified research facilities and talent. So walk us through what this means for your ability to supply of clinical grade materials for your clients and clinics, I guess, obviously down the line.
Yeah, so clinics, material, and also, starting to look at product development, in psilocybin and other psychedelics. We've talked a lot about our psilocybin extraction and what we're starting to see from some of the in-house research and the analytical testing we've been doing. To not tip my hat too much, but we wouldn't be expanding if we didn't see a significant reason for it. And there's a significant reason for it. And so, looking forward to increasing capacity there and really, continuing to move into, now that you've seen a couple of clinical trials get off of the floor, there's been a significant amount of money raised and starting to, I think, really build upon that. And psilocybin, I think, has a very potentially interesting regulatory pathway. You've seen what Oregon's done. You've seen the strong decriminalization movement. You've seen support from Health Canada. And I think there could be a couple different pathways in terms of what regulation for psilocybin looks like in a couple of years.
Do you think MDMA, I know you said this in the past, is still, again, the first compound that you think will be legalized?
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
You do, huh?
Yeah.
So
they're farther along in the clinical trial pathway. Again, notwithstanding potentially a more medical access model, but I guess I should back up in terms of broad access for a psychedelic. Yes, MDMA. I think psilocybin. Oregon's already created is creating a regulatory framework for psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, which is expected in about a year from now. But in terms of broad federal approval for a psychedelic drug, MDMA will be first.
What do you think is, trying to figure out the right question here, a lot of people are just coming back and just looking at it and it's like, wow, this industry, it's like watching paint dry, nothing's moving over the last 6 months. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes that a lot of people are unaware of. So sitting in front of an investor group right now, what's the message that you obviously want to communicate to them about, what we can foresee here going in the back end of 2021 and obviously going into 2022?
I think it's funny in terms of, sure, the capital market side of things, it's been quiet.
Yeah.
But again, and you and I have talked about this, look at charts from a year ago. If anybody even has a chart from a year ago, there's only a handful of companies that even have a chart dating back a year from now. So, that you've seen a crazy amount of growth in a short period of time. You've seen a number of groups raise a significant amount of money. and are now executing on research.
Yeah.
And, yes, research is a little bit slower for sure, but, again, we're in advanced stages of research in a lot of these different substances. And frankly, I would tell people, turn around from your screens and talk to any family member, any friend, and ask them if they're struggling with a mental health or know somebody that's struggling with a mental health issue.
Yes.
I don't know anybody that is at least not 1 degree of separation. And this is a complete disruption of how we treat mental health. And I think will be the standard of care. I think it will be included in the standard of care of how we treat mental health issues.
I was speaking to a doctor earlier this week from the University of Michigan, and he was saying what's great about these junior biomedical companies is that they're actually doing research on the science, unlike Big Pharma, which is there for the almighty dollar. He did say, too, that you'll be surprised as to how interested Big Pharma already is in this space, and they're actually going to move in a lot quicker than what you think. Do you agree with that?
I agree in some parts.
Okay.
There's just parts of this that isn't in traditionally Big Pharma's wheelhouse, right? Like again, it's a very service heavy space. I think there's opportunities potentially. People talk about microdosing and things like that. I think for Big Pharma, potentially to get involved, I think when we speak more broadly about new ways of treating mental health, there's great technologies and tools to be able to support practitioners, provide people with opportunities to work on their mental health while they're at home. There's just lots of room for disruption in the space. And so I think certainly probably Big Pharma is looking to get involved on a broad level in regards to what are new ways of treating mental health. And if psychedelics are a part of that, I definitely wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think you're right. In addition, good news about your expansion facility. You also got some bank coverage, which is great. You recently announced that your first bank coverage with 8 Capital, designating Numinus with a price target of $1.10 Canadian. That's a 12-month price target, and calling you a clear leader among the diversified players. So we know you've been very selective about the investment banks you work with. So overall, were you satisfied with the fairness of the coverage by 8 Capital?
Yes and no.
I see a smile there. I see a smile.
If I'm being honest, yes and no. I think 8 Capital's done a good. I think they've done a good job of trying to understand the space.
Okay.
I think that's been probably one of the biggest challenges, and we've talked to a lot of analysts. Is just what kind of audience is the analyst trying to reach? Are they trying to reach a more wellness audience? Are they trying to reach, the cannabis converted, or are they trying to reach more of like a biotech pharma audience? And I think as this space grows and evolves, I think that's probably where people are trying to figure things out right now is there's going to be different classes of how people are involved with psychedelics. There's going to be pure drug development, pharma focus companies. There's going to be companies that are solely focused on clinics. There's going to be companies that are focused on technologies. And then there's, companies like ours that are a little bit of a hybrid. And, we have a reason for that. And I think it's important. But I think a little bit better classification of just what are people doing and where are sort of the value opportunities.
Yes.
And I think it's the same on the analyst side of things as well.
Yeah. Just a learning curve, I would say, more than anything. One of the key components I find about your company is that you drive sustainability, let's face it, revenue growth wise, through the production and extraction of your psilocybin mushrooms and other compounds in a standardized format. So let's talk about demand for these substances. I'd like to get a better idea with that. So what are you seeing right now in terms of how endpoint demand, I guess, is shaping up as the industry evolves?
I think what we've seen is a huge amount of demand. I mean, even at our clinics, we have people calling in daily, asking, can they be a part of a clinical trial? When is psilocybin or MDMA therapy going to be available? Obviously ketamine is there and people are doing ketamine assisted psychotherapy as well. But the amount of inbound we get from people
really,
lining up to be involved, is really, it's.
And what is it, Payton? Like conditions? Is it depression? Is it is that the majority of it?
depression, anxiety, and really treating trauma, right? Like where
Yeah.
psychedelics just play this amazing role is, and I encourage everybody to read, some of the work that Dr. Gabor Mate has done, is really like all of these different indications, whether you're talking about anxiety, depression, suicidality, substance use disorder, there's an underlying trauma that is in most instances, there's an underlying trauma that is creating this expression, the way that this indication or the feeling that you're having.
Right.
And psychedelics have curative intent, right? You look at the MAPS work, for example, and we've talked about that before, but they have curative intent. And the only way to do that is get at the root of what has created the indication in the first place.
I'd love to know what a psychedelic, just the whole journey and having like, that sort of, what's the proper term that I'm trying to figure out? Just an experience through it all. I've never had that before. But how much do you think that will take time to change the overall complexion of how people view it? Because in the event that these become legalized, then becomes the whole stigma of like re-educating people and feeling comfortable. That will take time, obviously, as we know. But what do you think's the right approach when it comes to something like that?
Say you're somebody that's struggling with PTSD, and I came to you and I said, hey, guess what? I've got this new treatment that in 3 treatments, the rates we're seeing are 88% of people saw a significant reduction in their symptoms, and 66% of people actually no longer met the PTSD criteria, so they were cured. If I said that to you as someone struggling with PTSD, lined up, down the block and around the corner, right? And that's the results that MAPS is seeing with MDMA. And I think we're at a place as a society where, certainly there's still stigma, but I think it's
changing a lot.
My feeling is it's changing a lot. And I think the mindset shift that people need to consider more is the way we treat mental health, right? Usually the way we've treated people is, okay, if you're depressed or you have anxiety, we put you on an SSRI, you're a depressed person, you're going to go see a therapist for 10 years. It's like this ongoing symptom management thing. Whereas with psychedelics, yes, it's maybe a bigger upfront cost, but you could cure these issues that are, making your life considerably more challenging than it needs to be in 3 treatments. We're talking like 6 weeks. Yeah. 6 weeks, and just the quality of life that people can have. It's profound. And so I think that's the bigger mindset shift is just a different way of treating mental health issues.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I love just hearing these stories, but it seems almost too good to be true, but it's not. And there's lots of examples across the world about how that is changing in just 3 treatments, like you said. Like, I can't imagine somebody that thinks about worrying about death or the future, anxiety and all that, and then just like that, it's gone. How that can be so liberating for somebody. Last thing I wanted to touch on, I think this is an important one. Let's circle back to the end of last month on September 30th. You closed down your operations in solidarity of Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on only federally regulated businesses were required to shut down, but you did as well, which I thought was a big announcement by you as a company. So what did this day mean to you and the company, and how, most importantly, the support that you think that you wanted to provide?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. We've talked a lot about accessibility and that really being a cornerstone for Numinus and what we want to be able to do. As we've talked about, these therapies are expensive. And not only that, but you have to be able to treat different populations and communities of people. And a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last little while is really making sure that even our therapists have cultural safety training. We do hire for diversity in terms of our therapist community, as well as our C-suite and executives. And we do make sure that, we have a duty really as people living on Indigenous lands, regardless of where you live in North America. You're a settler. You are on Indigenous land, and you have to be able to, most people, when I started Numinus, it was, okay, how do we change the world? And you do that through people, but you have to be able to provide accessibility for all groups of people, and for us to acknowledge, obviously with what's happened in Canada, and a lot of the recent uncoverings of the residential school system, and frankly, the environment that we're in currently, whether that's the Black Lives Matter movement, or all of these different cultural things that are very much coming to the forefront at the moment, to provide equitable access for people is extremely important for us, and to acknowledge, and as a mental health organization, to acknowledge important dates and people is really important to us.
Yeah, it's all about awareness, all about giving them a voice, and most importantly, us listening, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess I'll see you next month in Miami at Wonderland. That should be exciting, obviously, for the industry. There's going to be a big event, a lot of people going, but I think that'll be a big stepping stone. And for those viewers that don't understand or don't know, Microdose is actually putting on a big conference, premier conference. HC Wainwright's going to be a major sponsor. So there's a lot of the who's who of the entire industry will be there. But do you anticipate, I don't know the right term is, but there's going to be a lot of talk going on about the overall mature of the industry. But what do you think this means, obviously, with this conference being put on and getting everybody in the same room, knowing that we've been living this virtual life for the past year and a half, 2 years?
I think the psychedelic space is so interesting. I mean, it really got birthed during COVID, right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the companies, a lot of the people haven't been able to meet in person. So I think for the industry, it's great. I think this is a space that needs collaboration for sure.
Yeah.
It needs, we're talking about a lot of system disruption in terms of the healthcare system, even the financial system. So I think collaboration is necessary. And I'd also encourage people to come out and, meet with the management teams, get a feel for, who's doing what. And I think, I really do think this all industries, but this industry in particular, the authenticity and the reason why people are doing things is really, really crucial. And I think you see a lot of that in the space. And so I encourage people to come out and meet the management teams, hear what they've got to say, and see some people in person.
Yeah, it'd be great. I feel like, you and I have talked so much over the past year and a half, you could come over to my place for like Thanksgiving dinner, and here we are, not even seen each other face to face yet. We'll probably see each other. Whoa, I thought he was taller, shorter, thinner, whatever. It'd be awkward at first, but hey, we'll finally see.
He wears pants. He wears pants.
He wears pants. Yeah, that'll be great just to see everybody. But, for the viewers watching, big conference coming up, and obviously that's tremendous growth and a big opportunity for this industry as it looks to take the next step. But listen, great work. Really applaud the stuff that you're doing, especially with, the stuff that you did back last month, back on September 30th. But keep up the great work, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Payton.
Thanks, man.